What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with the overall market, talk about SPY, the QQQ, and also Tesla stock. Talk about these falling wedges that have been essentially developing on them, and then break down how they're all connected in a way. But before I break anything down with all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so make sure you take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. The offer ends very soon, and it's in just about 4 days, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, anyways, going back to SPY, this thing had a bullish divergence that has been developing so far, but this alone does not guarantee anything, like I said from yesterday. So there is a possibility of a bounce that could come, but we need to wait for confirmation to get that breakout. So I just want to review this just for about a minute or two before I start talking about some other tickers. For SPY, right, we have this confluence of many supports, like I mentioned yesterday. Uh, we hit this previous level. So this is where our breakout level was, this 444 support. It's basically between 443.5, so like 444. Right here, we got this breakout from this previous resistance. So this was a retest of the breakout right here. So we have some nice support right there. Previous resistance becoming support, and that's where SPY went to on Friday. Then we also have this blue trend line as support and this other trend line for the falling wedge. I told you guys that if we get a really bad piece of news going into the next week, we could remain in this falling wedge for some time before we get a breakout. That is a possibility, but we need a catalyst to really push this thing down, because right now we're starting to see some signs that the market is trying to hold support. And then the most likely possibilities would be, if there isn't any bad news, the market either comes down to like 442 for just a little touch to fill the gap down here, and then it bounces and then tries to retest the top here, and maybe it breaks out, right? So something like this, just to draw it out one last time before I talk about the other tickers. We come down a little lower, just like this. We come back quickly, form an inverse head and shoulders like structure, retest the high, then we just start breaking out like this. For instance, this would be one hypothetical example. And just because we break out like this back to like 451, it does not mean we have to keep going and going and going. We could reject off this resistance right here, just hypothetically, right? So that is one possibility. The other possibility would be us just staying in the wedge. Like I said, if we get bad news, we could remain in this wedge, continue dropping, going back and forth and back and forth. So sorry if these lines kind of overlap a bit, but like this is the more like bearish case. We just continue to remain stuck and we just keep dropping if some really bad news keeps coming. So far, we don't have any bad news for this to continue happening as of right now, and we'll have to wait and see on that. Right. So that's like the second possibility. And then the more like bullish possibility would be, we already bottomed and the market's getting ready for some upside, and we're going to see the market just start uptrending from here. It could get a retest of this trend line or not. I mean, I'm not really too sure about that, or if I'd count on that, but then we could just start, uptrending, starting to break out as soon as like Monday or Tuesday, and then see another test of these higher levels as we approach Wednesday or so. And even if we do hit these high levels, I mean, it could still like reject off this trend line and then continue. So those are like the three possibilities on SPY. So I've been saying that the green line, this green possibility, and this yellow one are the two most likely possibilities. Unless we get a really bad piece of news, then the red one could happen, but that's unlikely. So we're most likely going to see something like this, and we could try to break out higher or not. It really depends on the news. But these are most likely as of right now, given the limited news we have about next week. I want to be as clear as possible about this. For data, we don't really have too much going on. We have some consumer inflationary expectations reports coming out for Monday. Tuesday, some exports and imports data, and nothing else for the next couple of days that's like too crazy. We do have the FOMC minutes for Wednesday, but that's about it. Nothing else is like that crazy. So the data is going to be cooling off a bit. We have some Fed speakers too. We have earnings as well. Nothing too big. Lots of retail like the Home Depot, not to mention Walmart and Target, and the list goes on. So those are worth mentioning. But now let's talk about some other tickers, because one thing worth mentioning is that SPY has this falling wedge. But what about the QQQ? Does the QQQ have the same thing? And that's the really interesting thing about the market, how unison it tends to be with these algorithms. For the triple Q, the NASDAQ, it's the same thing, right? We have this falling wedge that's been developing over and over again, and we're hitting some support right here at this 364 level. So when you zoom out of the chart, this was a historical support, 364.8, very close to 365. That's where we bounced off today. But the real question is, if we break below it, there is still like 363, 362, and then 360. These are all major supports. It's very hard to tell where the bottom is going to likely be for a possible bounce because there's so many supports between 365 and 360 where it could try to find support off of to bounce. I'm not 100% sure about how low it's going to go. It really depends on news and stuff. So it has lots of support. There's a lot of support between 365 and 360. We need a very, very bad catalyst to cause this thing to actually break down. Right? We need some very, very bad news. If the bad news comes, we could see the triple Q remain, in the wedge. And then to add on to this, let me just mention one more thing. Looking at some data on the 30 minutes time frame, you will notice that the QQQ has made lower lows over and over again. This happened 3 times. So right here we had a low, another low, and then we didn't make a low here, but we made a new low right here on Friday. So 3 lower lows were made, but the MACD has a lower low before, a higher low, then a higher low. The RSI has technically a very low low around 21. The low becomes 23. The next low becomes 20, actually 30, I believe, around 30. So like 30. So the RSI is trending up, MACD is trending up, price is trending down, forming a divergence. This is a positive divergence, suggesting upside is a possibility. Now, these divergences alone are not sufficient. You do not trade solely based off them. They're just one indicator of a possibility of a turn. Now, you need this alongside confluences of other indicators to get more confirmation. Also, the news could play a big role. It's going to play a big role, of course. But this is one signal suggesting that the market could be getting ready for a slight reversal. It doesn't have to be a crazy reversal, just like an attempt to break out for now. And we are hitting some critical support right here on the triple Q, right? 365 was a good one. We also have support very close to 363, 362, some nice supports. It could bounce off some of those levels looking at the current trend. So we'll have to wait and see on that. The best thing to do is just be patient. I'm not 100% sure how this is going to go. The more bearish case for this would be if we get lots of like really bad news. If the news is horrible, we could see this thing just somehow continue to trend like this, but it's going to be hard for this to actually break below all these supports. It's going to be hard. We need some bad news. We need something really negative to come out to cause that to happen. So you're going to be watching if it remains in this wedge before getting some kind of break afterwards. That would be like a more bearish case. It's going to take a lot longer for us to get that break. But what else is possible? Now I'm going to delete this. Just remember this in your head as the more bearish case. Another possibility would be something like this thing retests the high already, just like how SPY was already starting to bounce. We could see the QQQ make an attempt for 368, trade a little sideways and start trying to break out of this wedge. If we get confirmation of a break right here, if it actually breaks, this thing could start pushing into the 370s again. If we get a confirmation of a break of this wedge, that's not like temporary or anything like that. That is a possibility with the bullish divergences forming, and we could form a temporary break to the upside. Now, I'm going to have to redraw some trend lines to see where the next resistance will be, but you could draw out, like, for instance, this level right here. We could take this extended trend line and just connect these two like this, and that could be one, like, really major resistance, like, right about here. If it were to get a crazy breakout, it could get a huge rejection off like 377, then come back down. There's also the previous supports here, which are going to act as resistance. We could also do this. I mean, I know this is kind of messy, but you could also draw this out. This could be another resistance right here, this like high. So even like very close to the 370, we're going to see some resistance on it. But anyways, I hope this is as clear as possible. And then the really bearish case, or like the middle case, would be like this breaks down a little bit lower, comes down into like the lower 360s, 363 or so, but it starts chopping a lot because of the fact that there was a lot of chop historically before we get some kind of bounce approaching the end of the week. That's also another possibility, right? That could also play out. And I'm just calling this out because this is another hypothetical situation, but this is worth noting because it's very possible for something like this to happen. Now, these two cases are more probable if we don't get major like negative news, such as banks getting downgrades or like another bank collapsing. If that does not happen, these two are very probable. If it does happen, if a bank collapses or something, then like I said before, this possibility right here, let me just try to get it back. This one right here would be more probable if we get some kind of bad news. So I hope that's as clear as possible. These are all possible, and you want to watch the wedge for a confirmed breakout. But there isn't really negative news just yet, so the more probable case would be one of these playing out. I think my lines just got deleted. I'm sorry about that. So something like this would be more probable as long as we don't get bad news, and we'll have to wait and see, at least for the time being. Uh, I'm also saying this because of the bullish divergence developing, which is just one possible signal of the reversal. But just to be safe, we have to wait and see if we could break our wedge. So watch for the break for confirmation. What else is interesting to me would be the fact that Tesla also has a wedge. Look at Tesla. It looks like this, a very, very nice looking falling wedge on it. Tesla also has that gap down in the 230s. So I don't know if it's going to fill the gap first and then try to bounce, or if it's just going to, continue. There are three possibilities on Tesla I'm going to break down in just a couple of minutes. First, let's look at one more thing before I talk about Tesla's falling wedge. Let me just mention this. When you zoom out of the chart on Tesla on the 30 minutes time frame, go to the 30 minutes and keep your extended hours on to get more information, you will notice that there is technically a bullish divergence on Tesla developing. So what does that mean? Basically, and let me check one more thing before I talk about that. So we made a lower low here. We made one low here around 242. Then we had 241.3. Then we saw 238 as three new lows. So we made one low here. We made a second low. Then we made a third low. On the RSI, you will notice that for the first low, the RSI in Tesla was at 19 for this low right here, right? The second low, which was right, let's double check. I think it's right here, right here. The RSI was at about 24, 22 to 24, basically. And then for the third low, the RSI was at about 26 when Tesla hit 238 for Friday. So the RSI, technically, the lows are getting higher. The RSI is making higher lows. The MACD is making higher lows. The price has been making lower lows. That is a divergence, right? The price is downwards, MACD is upwards, RSI is on an uptrend. A positive divergence exists on Tesla, just like for the QQQ on SPY. However, there's no confirmed breakout, so don't assume it's happening just yet. And here are the possibilities on Tesla. So if Tesla, gets lots of bad news, for example, let's just say it keeps happening, we could continue to develop the divergences, maybe get a small bounce for Monday to retest like 246 or so, then reject off of it and just start continuing to downtrend like this to fill our gap. And if you're really bearish, it could technically still crash like this to 230. That is a possibility before we do try to see this thing bounce. But this is unlikely. I want to be clear. This is very unlikely because uh, there isn't really a negative piece of news to cause this just yet. Why would Tesla drop to 230? Why? What is the negative news that would cause it? Typically you don't just see it drop and drop and drop and drop because it's been dropping for many, many days now. It's already dropping so much. So why would it continue dropping below 240? Why would it drop all the way down to 230? Why? And the answer is it needs some kind of news. There has to be some very bad piece of news to cause this to happen. Tesla has to announce something like a recall or something has to happen, something really bad. And this is one possibility. As of right now, it looks less likely because there isn't that piece of news just yet. But keep this in the back of your mind. I'm going to delete this now. The second possibility would be this. Tesla maybe gets some kind of bounce. Maybe it retests this high. It could bounce a little bit and it comes right back down. It's about 235. And that's because of this right here. Let me just bring this back up. On the daily chart on Tesla, don't forget about this gap down here. We have this gap down to about 235. Around 235, yes, there's an unfilled gap. So what could happen is Tesla breaks down to about 235. We fill the gap and then we get our bounce like this, and then Tesla starts this uptrend. It's going to require some kind of like bad piece of news. That would be like a little bit more of a like medium scenario, not like too bearish, not too bullish, kind of in the middle for the potential breakout. And for there to be a breakout, always remember you have to watch this resistance line. So this one right here, you want to watch this trend line. the green line to see if we break it or not. That's going to be like another case, which is very possible for us to fill the gap and then bounce. Or the really bullish case would be, depending on Monday, if there's no bad news for Tesla, Tesla could start uptrending, reject a little bit, and then just try pushing and pushing all the way up to these higher levels and get a nice retest of 250 or so, or even higher than that potentially. It could just start breaking out immediately and not even fill the gap just yet. This gap down here at like 235, it could wait for a later date to fill that, or it may not fill it for the time being. So those are the three possibilities. Or the red line I drew all the way down for it to just continue dropping is a possibility, but it's unlikely right now at the time I'm recording this because there's no negative news. There's no like major negative news that just came out, like a big recall or something to cause it to crash all the way down to like the very low 230s, the mid 230s or so. Secondly, the yellow line, this possibility, it is technically possible for it to drop a little bit more to fill the gap and then bounce off gap support. That is, something that's common. It's a possibility, or it might just bounce from here. It might just not even go down to the gap. It might be done dropping. It could be forming or making an attempt to form like a inverse head and shoulders. Maybe it comes down to like 241 and then just bounces and just starts pushing up to these higher levels. That's another possibility. I think the odds favor some kind of bounce. These two are the most likely possibilities for next week. As of right now, at the time I'm recording this, there's limited news for Tesla, but I think they're most likely going to happen. I will adjust this if something happens, some bad news, but for now, I'm not seeing it. And based off the technicals are suggesting a bounce could be coming soon with the bullish divergence, the quadruple or triple bullish divergences on SPY, the QQQ, and Tesla, and they're worth noting going into next week. So I hope this video was very helpful for a lot of people out there. I hope you guys found some value in it. I just want the best for everyone. So please take care, do what you have to do, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Tesla on the market to the moon as the long term is still incredibly bright, and peace out.